Welcome to the Odds. I'm your host, Emmanuel Hene.
And your co-host, Samuel Atagra. Today we are going to have a very interesting conversation. We have a guest with us all the way from Ghana, Caleb Mantey. Right, he's a VR AR pioneer, one of the leading pioneers in Ghana. For me, when I ever first saw his work, and I know those listening in, you are going to appreciate it once you see what this guy is doing. It will blow your mind, right? Myself, it's an honor to have you here, and I know it's going to be an impact on many that listen to this podcast. And so, Caleb, welcome.
Yep. Thank you for having me. Um, it's an honor to also share my expertise and probably interact with you guys on this podcast. Um, Emmanuel has been a good friend of mine for a very long time, and when he reached out to me, I was like, "Yeah, let's do it. It'll be great to have me on the call so we can discuss."
All right. So Caleb, we'll start a little like you telling us something about yourself for our viewers to get to our listeners to get to know you.
Okay, so you already know my name. I'm Caleb. I would say not more of like, I'm coming from the software engineering background, but not from a college degree. Um, for me, it's been a thing of exploration and curiosity. I think I started pretty young. After JHS, SHS, I started looking into game technology because I really loved games. I used to play games, used to go to the game center and stuff like that. So it got me intrigued. Started looking at how to build a game and all of that. And what kicked the process off for me was in during my university days, taking my degree. Um, I got somehow introduced into virtual reality. Those days it was the Google Cardboard where you use a mobile phone for experiencing virtual reality and augmented reality. So it all started from there. Started building games for that platform until the first standalone VR headsets came out from Meta, which was formerly Facebook. That was the Quest One, and I remember purchasing the Quest One just like yesterday. It came just a few months after it came out. I happened to have a friend that was coming down from the States, and I had gathered some money from some side gigs and some contract work I've done for some clients, and I gave the money to my friend, and then he did a purchase and brought it to me. So I remember the joy I had setting up the device, and then having to build different projects, VR applications for that platform. For me, that was one of the best feelings, and that kickstarted the process for me. So from there, it just went on. Um, as a matter of fact, I was also funding my VR startup.
Startup, yeah.
So
I think
it just started off from
we will talk about your startup.
Yeah.
So I mean, when we first met, I would say it's been almost 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. And at that time, I was really wowed by the things you could do, like modeling, 3D structures, having your own game. I remember back in the office, we used to wear your, you know, and just mess around with it, and it was really interesting. But I remember back in the days you had Dunga Studio. Can you tell us a little bit about Dunga Studio?
Yes. Interesting. So yeah, Dunga Studios was where it started actually. So I started that in school. I started off by building mobile games, small games, and it went into VR and AR. So that was where I founded Dunga Studios, and I wasn't doing much at the time. I would say I had a lot of games then, but they weren't really out there. So like you said, I remember in the office, I'll bring the VR headset around. Sometimes bring my laptop, let people play my games, get feedback. Generally, that's what I was doing then. And I got some small gigs, like a client to say, "Oh, we want a game for a program." So they'll call me and they'll be like, "Hey, can you build a small game for a program, and then we'll pay you this amount." So I build a game. We go for the program. I set up the VR device, set it up for the event, and then people get to play and then have fun. So that was what Dunga Studios was doing at the time. It was more focused on building stuff for specific clients and for parties and events. Um, one of the I think one of the major ones, major contracts. We'll get into that, but I'll just highlight one, which was with Close Up. So Close Up is a toothpaste brand in Ghana, and they happened to give like me a contract. The contract was actually given to a particular firm that was Dobison VR, and they needed a VR expert. At the time, we didn't have a VR expert, so they brought me on board, and I worked on that project for Dobison VR, and that was what they showcased at the close-up event. So the whole idea of the game was you are actually in a person's mouth, and you're having two toothbrush like in your hands, and all you're doing is you're using the toothbrush to kill the germs from attacking the teeth. So it was just a simple game, but that really was the highlight for Dunga Studios, I would say.
Wow. But the Dunga name, like, what does it stand for?
So the funny thing is, he really didn't stand for anything special. Um, Back in SHS, my friends used to call me Dunga. And at the time, the Brazil coach was called Dunga. The Brazilian coach was called Dunga. So I remember during one of our inter-houses game, I went to the pitch and I said I was coaching the football team. And they were like, my coaching style is like the Brazilian coach, Dunga. So I was not taking any nonsense at all. When someone was messing up, I would just slap the person name. And my friends just gave me that name, Dunga. So I happened to just, attach the name to the startup.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm. And I believe in audits, you are the only person doing audit, right? Because I could imagine with these game studios, they have, you see all these long credits, right? And you are handling everything from sound to the 3D modeling too.
Yeah, exactly. So that has been it. It's like indie level. So I was just doing everything all around the
That's
clock.
wild.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's really interesting.
yeah,
So you said your passion has just been the fact that you love games. Is that the case?
exactly.
But how about the so is there, because I know you do games, you do AR, VR, so are they all tied together? Um I mean,
Yes.
relating to your passion, are they all tied together?
Yes, they are. Actually, if you look at the VR technology itself, it's coming from the gaming technology. It's just a game environment, and they say, hey, what if the game environment is brought to you where you control the input? So basically, instead of controlling the input through a keyboard and a mouse, now your head movement controls the input. Your body, like your physical motion, controls the input. So it's the same underlying technology. And I just want to highlight this because of the way I was like immersed in the gaming space. Picking up the VR and AR technology became so easy because it really made sense to me. It was just like, wow, this is what gaming needed for a very long time. And picking up that technology, I started to think beyond gaming. It made me understand things through a different lens. So aside gaming, there is the engineering side where you can use that simulations and all of that. So that has been like the whole spectacle for me.
Before we move forward, I remember you once showed me your final year project you did in school, and I thought that was really cool. If you can just share a little um, details
Yeah.
about that too.
Yeah. So with the final year project, I do remember I studied geomatic engineering basically, and we have to do, if you are used to geomatic engineers, what they do is they use instruments like total station, a level, and so many other stuffs to do measurements on the surface of the land. So usually some of these instruments really cost. Some of them are very expensive. In Ghana here, we are looking at 100,000 to, like, 200,000 and the rest. And some of the schools don't have the money to, purchase some of these instruments. So what I did was I said, okay, I can build this entire environment in VR and AR, and what will happen is it will be a simulation where you can actually use these instruments as though you're using them on the field. And that's going to give you like the practical experience. So when you go into the job market, you're already ready. Even though you've not physically touched the device, the simulation is going to teach you how to actually use the device. And I think I worked on that during my final year, and it was very, very good. I think up to now, they are still using that software for training on campus. And it's all the things the lecturers are really, really proud of. And for me, that's one of my proudest moments in school.
Wow. How about I think I saw online that one of your teachers kind of rejected the idea.
Yes. Yeah, on that, yes, I had backlash. I had a lecturer who told me I wasn't serious. I'm wasting my time building games whilst my friends are doing artificial intelligence, machine learning, and doing so many awesome stuff. I'm here saying I'm creating a game. So yeah, there was a backlash from one lecturer who really disliked me. Didn't like the idea, but I think regardless, I stood my ground, and it paid off. And now I know he really regrets some of those actions. But I mean, it's life, so we move on regardless.
Yeah. So where do you think some of these issues is actually stemming from? Because personally, too, when I was doing my bachelor's, right, we had a lecturer that actually told us, I mean, I was doing information technology, and then this is a lecturer who is supposed to teach you guys, and then he said something very, I don't know if it's profound and very useless, right, in my opinion. More like, if I mean, there is nothing new we would create. All these things have been done, right? And you're expecting them to be more inspirational. And then he's making it sound like, I mean, to develop softwares, you were saying all these things, like you need lawyers, very extreme stuff, right? And then after school, I myself personally, I discovered, YouTube resources when I was in uni. I started doing my own stuff. And then you realize it's not really like a big deal as they make it sound. So do you think it's a thing of, I don't know whether in our setting back home, right? Like, I mean, Ghana, for those who are listening, is it a thing of, and I mean, I'm sure other African countries could probably relate to this as well. Is it a thing of these lecturers well, some of them are very old, right? Don't get me wrong. It's more like they've been there. Some of them even did computer science on a sheet of paper, right? And so
Yeah.
it's because they are not abreast to our, I mean, the current technology, the technological development that's going on. What do you think?
Yes. It's very good you brought this up. I think a week ago I was having a discussion with an intern currently as a startup, and this has been some of the issues. For me, I see it stemming from different angles. So one angle I also see it coming from is the theory is too much. So I'll give you an example. Back then, we had a lecturer that actually worked, as a software engineer. Um, Worked for Haptel. He worked for so many institutions, and you could see clearly his teaching style was so different. I didn't study computer science, but from what the computer science guys were telling me, this man was teaching on a different level, and it was very practical. He will come and then give a question, and the question is like, "Hey, you have a software product, and you have like 100,000 users. You are facing some scaling issues. You need to scale your software. These are the limitations. It was written with a legacy code, so you need to find a way to go about this without also breaking some of the different parts of the software." And you could see how practical that was. As to another lecturer that has actually, gone through the computer science curriculum, hasn't had the experience to work in the software industry like for some time, and has learned everything pretty much through books, done masters, come up with good thesis, done so many research in maybe the AI space, has some theories and all of that. So I categorize them into two. We have the computer scientists, and I feel we have an application developer. Now, a computer scientist typically doesn't care about users, doesn't care about um, how the user is going to interact with the software, doesn't care about all those nitty gritties. The computer scientist is a pure researcher, and some of our lecturers fall in that category. They are pure researchers, and all they do is researching into different topics, like coming up with new algorithms to interface with different devices. And on top of that, we the application developers will take those research, turn them into different use cases, build a package or an SDK, build a library on top of that, and then then now we move to the software developers, where they are the people who actually take those SDKs, build software products around that. So I think that has been the issue for some time now. We need, and I feel like we have had the experience to work in some software institutions and companies, and I feel like it's some of us have to go back there and actually take some of this curriculum and refine. I don't entirely blame the lecturers. Some of them are coming from purely an intellectual perspective, and we have others that are also coming from the industrial part, and we have two parts. Basically, someone who want to be a researcher, keep continuing like researching, trying the boundaries of technology, like trying to see what can come up of this. But like at the same time, we also have someone who wants to build products, wants users to use them, wants to actually make an impact through that angle. So that's how I see it. I feel like we need to be able to distinguish between the two, and it's something we've not been able to distinguish between in our universities.
Oh,
Okay.
those are some good points actually. And on since we are on this topic, so when it comes to research, right? I have my own opinion on this generally, and when it comes to these institutions, and I know some of them actually get allowance, or I don't know how they call it, for doing these kind of research. And so for the longest time, right, I think, right, and I agree with you, but then there is this school of thought that also has it that it has been a thing of stacking up a number of research in your name. And so it hasn't really, because if you ask me, the lecturer that actually denied you, I mean, thought what you were doing was irrelevant. If they were doing research that they actually put themselves into, and not just, I mean, and there has been instances where someone does their research, they just put their name on it. And so for one lecturer, they have about 56, right? But then with my experience, when I was working in Ghana, right, there was this, I wouldn't want to say, there was this guy who was also like a professor, right? Then there was this paper that he contributed a little. he did not want his name on it, right? Because he didn't think it merits him having his name on it because he didn't really contribute much, right? But then it has been the case for most lecturers in Ghana and professors, right? They are just stacking up in their name. They've written 60, 70. So I don't know whether it's to get these allowances or it's just, I mean, I don't know, it's fun to say that, oh, I'm a professor, I have about 60 papers in my name. So that's what sometimes I also blame it on. So it's not research that actually has substance for them. And so they are not able to communicate it well to their students, right?
Yeah, I side with you on this one. And what I've also realized, like what you're saying, we as a people, our nature is to feel very important. And I don't know, I think most Ghanaians really strive hard to like feel very important. One thing I've also realized is even the lecturers within themselves, there is no sort of academic body, sort of collaboration. Everyone is trying to, be on top of the other, So one is trying to like get more papers than the other is also trying hard and all of that. So there is some unhealthy competition also going on at the same time. And yeah, to be honest with you, most of the research that's being done, you realize that it doesn't really carry weight, and it's very true.
Some are actually by students and they just, put their names on it.
Exactly, exactly. So it's really a big problem, and I think I would be more toward. I think we as a people we need to find what we are good at and stick to that. I feel like Ghanaians of the diaspora are very good with research. You hear Ghanaians out there, and they come up with very good research. But what I've also realized is Ghanaians based here are very good with products. So you can see Haptel is now scaling, is going to other African countries. You can see other products that Ghanaians have built. There's Ego Ticket. I worked there for some time, a ticketing platform, and now they are doing extremely well. So like there are all these companies. When we move directly into the product line and we try to, come up with a business, we're able to deliver. But when it comes to this research side, number one, we don't even have the right resources within the country to embark on some of this research. And then that also contributes a factor to the fact that okay, I can do anything at all, and since the structures are not in place, no one is going to detect it, no one is going to see it. I can just publish it, and then yeah, they will accept it. So that also doesn't help. And when you come into the product line, you are building a business. You see something like Haptel, you see some of these businesses. You can't play like you just can't play like you have work to do. But when you look at the academia side, it's not like that. To the extent there was a particular course in Winneba, University of Education, where there was a news that came out that that particular people who undertook that particular program, they didn't have the license to offer like the degree. Like really, the whole university couldn't put all those measures in check. So people who graduated within a particular year, their degree doesn't hold. So it's crazy. So I feel we need more lecturers in the application developer space. That one I know I can trust. There are even people I can point out and say, if this guy goes there and is a lecturer, this is the kind of student we are going to produce, and this is the quality. So that's what I can say.
All right. So going back to the game development and AR, VR, do you need to be super creative in order to get into that field?
Okay, I would say no and yes. The reason being that if you are super creative, I tell you, like, boom, that's even extreme. Like, boom, you will really go far. But if you're not creative, the underlying technology is basically engineering. Like, so software engineering. Once you're a software engineer, It's easier to just transfer your skills from um, full stack or something to that space, because within that space, it's a whole niche. We have like the designers, they are the super creative people. They come with the graphics and all of that, and then we have the more of the engineer that writes the code, the logic for the gameplay and how the environment interacts and behave and all of that. So you can be more of an engineering centered person and still strive in that field. For me, I was more of an engineering person before entering into that field, but with time, I was able to pick up the creative skills. So that was how come from time to time I could create my own assets, create everything as well as they could. But I feel like you don't really have to be creative. But if you are creative, it's a plus. Yeah.
Okay.
Are there like so what are the resources, right? Because I know in recent times, right, if you want to be like a front end developer, there are millions of resources online, right? So I could imagine the time you started when VR had not really taken off, right? And so there wouldn't be much interest for these YouTubers to put out resources for it. So how did you get into the space and really build these skills for yourself?
So yeah, I think I got in when it was pretty new, and the reason it was easier for me is the resources were more game developer focused. So it really cut out the web guys and all these other guys in the web dev space. But anyone who was doing core C sharp at the time, even if you were doing C sharp.net, that was still web. But then because Unity had native support for C sharp, it was easy for them to like transfer their skills there. So it all started off with, I think Unity was pretty much one of the first to adopt early SDKs for VR and AR. So there was something called Vuforia back then. There's another one called Easy AR. Easy AR, that was one of the tools I was using back then. I was also there was Wiki2, but Wiki2 was very expensive, so I had to switch to Easy AR because Easy AR had a free option. Vuforia also has a free option. So I was using that before I went to the Google Cardboard SDK. I was using that for my VR applications, and it really skyrocketed after Meta, Facebook acquired Oculus. They pretty much made it very accessible, and now they came up with a WebXR API, and now the web developers could now also get on board, start building VR application with web technologies, and then um, Apple Vision Pro just came into the mix recently, and now I mean, web guys can even enter into this space without any hassle.
3D modeling, right? To me, it's extensive, right? I've tried it, but those days myself, my laptop was I was using this Lenovo, right? It wasn't up there, and so I couldn't even do much with it, right? And you say you actually pick these skills over time. Was it so? I would say, right, by what you're saying, I think probably you had it in you because with these things, if you are not creative enough, right, it would be very daunting to actually even start, right? Because when I started, it's like you're putting together a whole model, you're the ears, you are modeling this. And I know these days it's quite easy because there will be some assets that you could just get online and then
Yeah.
reuse. For you personally, was it like was it an was it something you found it easy to do and more, or probably you were more interested in, and so became easier over time for you?
Yeah. I think because of my interest in the gaming technology, but one cool thing to note was it took me, I think the first 3D model software I touched was Maya. I opened Maya and I got confused the first time. I was really messed up. I tried hard to do something, tried to model something. I did something, wasn't really cool, very bad, and I closed the software. I didn't touch the software until after 1 year. So after 1 year, what I was doing was I was actually building games. I was just using primitive shapes. I was using cubes. I use a sphere. Those things are already pre-made in the software. So I was just using that, and then I started downloading some models from online. Then what I realized was I started exploring the models. I'll look at the models and I'll be like, whoa, okay, so this is a table. So I just look at it and I say, okay, the table can be made out of four cubes. A cube that is very flat, and then four cubes as the legs. So I started that way. And then I got into Blender. So when I got into Blender, I started by looking at some YouTube videos, started learning, I joined a Blender community on WhatsApp, saw what some of the guys were doing, and I asked, hey, how did you do this? And then they gave me some tips. And my first model I remember was a cup. I modeled a glass, a cup with a tray. And I quite remember the joy in my face, like having to cross that hurdle because, mind you, I touched Maya a year ago. I closed the software, never went back, and I got Blender, and I was like, so this is it. And from there, I started like taking complex shapes, and I kept like evolving, evolving, evolving. It kept getting better. So that was how it was for me.
Oh, cool.
That's so. Can you highlight some of your biggest challenges and struggles throughout your journey?
Yes, I think one of my struggles also is I think I have more of an engineering mind than a creative mind. And I've been able to build the creative mind over time. But what I've realized is anything I'm trying to do, I start thinking about the engineering side. Okay, so I'm modeling and I'll be like, "Ah, I'm repeating this step. Can I write a code in Blender to automate it for me? Like, basically, just automate the generation of a particular type of model. Is there a way I can record the steps I take to create the model and then use code to so that sort of thing. So it ended up making me spend more time to actually release games and all of that. And I felt like I should have released more games, um, even if they were that bad. I should have just released them. That's one lesson I learned. Like sometimes we want to perfect something so much that we end up shooting ourselves in the foot. You have to release it regardless. And even if it's bad, if it has 1 star or 2 star on the Play Store, let it be out there. And with time, you can refine it. So that's something I really struggled with. So I feel like with time, I've been able to learn, uh, um, learn to like control some of these things. Another thing also I'll note is, I mean, game development is really hard. I won't lie to you. Um, it's very hard. I mean, software engineering, yeah, the it's much. I don't know, but like if you are not really passionate about it, I'll just say it's not good to enter into it because I mean it's not healthy. Let me put it that way because it's crazy. You're working at odd hours, like I mean, just to meet some crazy deadlines and all of that. Um, with a normal software engineering approach, I mean, you have your tasks, you have everything pre-planned. Like, I mean, there are a lot of solutions out there, but you can be doing a game that's so unique that your core game logic is so unique that you have to come up with different ideas. You can end up finding something that's really close to what you're trying to achieve. But then at the end of the day, you realize, oh, this core game logic I had in mind is not what how it seems to be. And on top of that, it takes a long time to complete one game. It even takes a long time to get to the MVP stage. And you don't know whether they will like the game or not. Basically, you don't know if players will like the game or not. And you can release a game that took you 3 years or 4 years to build, and you have no downloads at all. But with a software engineering approach, you could quickly iterate. Game dev is not so. So normally, game developers that have the ability to quickly iterate, usually they have it there. So that's one thing. It's really hard, and you need to always come with the right strategy. And I think one last thing I also add is don't try to build something big. I've been there. People want to enter into game development, they want to build GTA exactly, want to build Call of Duty, want to do all of that. It's fun, but trust me, it's not a one man job. Like these companies have like literally thousands of people. They have a whole team working on assets, a whole team working on 3D, a whole team working on the design, the graphics. They have another team working on just coding, like game logic, and even the coding part is divided into engine developers, where people focus on building the game engine and providing certain functionality for the game engine. And we have people also focusing on writing the actual game code. So it's pretty hard. You should start by building something like the Mario, something like Subway Surfers. Build a very small game, release it. Then from there, you move on. You build another one. You build another one. You gather those experiences. Then over time, you can now say, okay, I can now do something as huge as this. Don't try to build it on your first game. Yeah. So that's okay.
With what you just said, right? There are a lot of questions I actually have in mind. So with all these the two challenges you have, which is very extensive, right? Is it more like because I think it's also the setting that we also find ourselves, right? It's not really. I'm not sure game development is really a thing back home, right? And maybe even across Africa. And so it's not one of those things like, for instance, if you start off as a front end developer, if you are interested enough, you could easily, pick up a few some backend skills and then make your application work, right? But here's the case: you don't need to just pick one or two things. You are picking up design, you're picking up 3D modeling, probably even sound, right? And it's a whole thing. And like you said, I mean, for all these games that we play, the credits line, as I indicated earlier, it's a lot of people that actually put it together. And so maybe, like you said, if you found yourself in a situation where maybe after school you could intern at a particular studio that's already making games, then where you are most interested in, like the software engineering, you could be part of a core team that actually build, I mean, a very solid game, right? So my follow up is, do you think, and probably, and I also give you your flowers, right, for really doing this for the longest time. I couldn't. I mean, I couldn't even think of doing it, right? Because for me, choosing these things is more like the ones that, and usually you also think about things that you could also monetize. And you've been very consistent at this, and I'm not sure it actually paid off from the beginning, right? So, do you have any vision? Because I think you should probably, I'm assuming, right, to actually have your own studio, like proper studio back home, have creatives teach others so that they probably join your team. And then you guys can actually build a very solid game together. Because I think with your skills, since you have a very 360 all around knowledge around it, with the solid team that you pick and nurture, right, you guys could build something nice.
Yes. To be honest, like I mean, so I have a startup currently. So I have a team. I'm actually on that journey. Um, I think for the longest time, it's been me figuring out this, and I've been able to get holistic idea of how the industry works. I happen to also be part of the Gamers Association in Ghana. So we have an association, and I don't know if you know, we have one popular studio already here in Ghana, Let's See Arts, where they work on video games. So they happen to be one of our strongest allies. Uh, Let's See Arts, yeah, Let's See Arts. So he's been in the gaming space for more than 10 years now. He's the oldest gaming studio in Ghana, and he's done a good job for us. Just last week, he was in San Francisco for the Game Developers Conference. So the Game Developers Conference is a global conference. So he represented the Gamers Association of Ghana. We have also another VR startup here called Nubian VR. We have Dobison VR. We have a lot of studios also coming up. And what we realized over time was we were all working in silos, and it was a huge struggle for us. So now what Letty has done, because he is the oldest person in the space, and it's recognized internationally. He brought all of us together to form the Gamers Association of Ghana. And now government approves that there's an association like that, that's like building games and all of that. And people are getting to know us. And we are also part of the Africa Games community. So last 2 years, I was able to go to South Africa for the Africa Games Week conference, and it was just the stakeholders in the gaming industry in Ghana. And we met other Nigerian gaming studios, and I bet you Nigerians are really doing well in the gaming industry. We met also people from Kenya, people from Zambia, South Africa, like so many people that are doing amazing stuff and are actually making money with games. That's the uh, crazy part of it. Like there are some people that are actually making their company makes like um, probably $500,000 a year from just building games, and these are startups in Africa. Yeah, these are startups based in Africa. So it's been part of my long term plan because this is a pretty new industry. And before this industry picks up in the country, you need people, key players in the industry, especially people who have like they say in regulation, the path the industry is going to take and all of that. So for me, it's been part of the long term plan, and that brought about Relu Interactives. I think Relu has been in existence with I and my co-founder. He's not here now, but like um, we started Relu, I'll say 2 to 3 years ago. But we officially registered the company, I think, last 2 years. That was when we did our official registration. Um, we are like 1 year old, 1 year and probably some few months old. Um, and so far, I say it's an amazing journey. And one of our major plan also is to gradually transform the gaming industry where we get to build games like the full story of Yasantua, people like Togbe Chali, people like Uncle Fanoche, a full game where it's going to take you through an immersive storyline of some of these heroic characters. And it's something we have story writers that are actually writing the story. Um, we're still discussing and trying to see how we could uh, get funding also from the projects, get some game developers before we kickstart this project. Yeah.
uh, Emmanuel comes in with what your last line right about the Yasantua and on all these characters. I think it's one thing that we have that I think is very advantageous. I mean, in the West, they had to create these characters. These are like someone's concept, but ours they actually lived, right? So personally, I've been one of the people that actually always advocated for we should probably even have a whole line of cartoons, like a whole line of cartoons around these stories. And if there are even games that we have superheroes, and I could imagine the impact it will have on the younger generation, people, kids even coming up, right? We were all kids before and how we loved games. And you could imagine if these games you play are actually characters that you could relate to, right? I think it would be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, talking about superheroes, um, I've always wanted to talk about like stories in Africa um, concerning real superheroes who existed, and Yasantua is one of
Mm.
the people I've been reading about for some time. So yeah, I think we don't really give much credit to those superheroes. We only read learn them in SHS, sometimes junior high school, just do social studies and we are done with it. But I feel like, I feel like we should
Yeah.
go deep into it and give a lot of credit to them and let the world know that Spider-Man and Superwoman are not the superheroes, but we actually have real superheroes who existed in Africa. Are you curious to uncover the next chapter? Caleb's years of perseverance have tipped the odds in his favor. Join us in our coming episode for thrilling revelations.